You should not be hearing this. What you are about to receive was never designed for the casual listener, the drifter, or the man who treats words as entertainment. This knowledge was guarded, filtered, and withheld for one reason only. Most people misuse power when it is handed to them cheaply. Throughout history, wealth has never moved randomly. It has always obeyed law. Yet those who understood these laws learned very early that they could not be shared openly without consequence. When power is made common, discipline disappears, and results collapse into confusion. You may already feel the tension in this message. Part of you wants to dismiss it as exaggeration, while another part senses that something important is being placed within reach. That inner resistance is not accidental. It appears whenever truth challenges comfort. Understand this clearly. Information alone has never created wealth. Libraries are full of poor men. Classrooms overflow with unfulfilled potential. What separates those who command riches from those who admire them is not access, but application enforced through discipline. That is why this knowledge was never meant to be free, not because it was secret, but because it demands obedience. Only the man willing to apply words as instruction, not inspiration, ever unlocks their power. Everyone else hears them and walks away unchanged. You have seen this pattern before. A message excites you. Hope rises. For a moment, you feel possibility again. Then life resumes, distractions return, and nothing actually changes. The fault is not the message. It is the absence of decisive application. The wealthy learned long ago that laws do not respond to curiosity. They respond to command. Words repeated with clarity, faith, and persistence imprint the subconscious, and the subconscious governs action. That is why careless repetition produces nothing, while disciplined repetition creates empires. These sentences were never meant to be scattered. They were designed to be selected, absorbed, and obeyed. Each one carries pressure, and pressure applied consistently reshapes circumstance, but only when treated as decree, not suggestion. You may wonder why such simple language could hold such force. The answer is uncomfortable. The most powerful truths are always simple, and that is why most people ignore them. Complexity flatters the ego. Simplicity demands responsibility. If these sentences were offered openly without warning, most would read them once, nod, and return to old habits. They would then blame fate, luck, or timing when nothing changed. That is why restraint was always part of the design. Wealth does not answer those who listen passively. It answers those who decide, speak, and persist. The spoken word, when aligned with belief and action, moves causes that remain invisible to the casual observer. This is not philosophy. It is law. You are being asked to listen differently now, not to be entertained, not to agree, but to prepare for obedience. Because once a principle is understood, ignorance is no longer an excuse, and responsibility begins the moment comprehension arrives. Most people are poor not because opportunity is scarce, but because focus is weak. They hear powerful ideas and dilute them with hesitation. They repeat affirmations without conviction, plans without commitment, and decisions without endurance. These sentences were constructed to eliminate drift. Each one compresses a principle into language the subconscious can accept. Repeated daily, they rewire expectation, behavior, and identity. But only if they are treated as law, not comfort. This is why timing matters. There are moments when a man is ready to hear something he previously ignored. Circumstances sharpen attention. Pressure clears noise. And suddenly, what once sounded abstract feels urgent and personal. If you are hearing this now, it is not accidental. It means you have reached a point where scattered effort no longer satisfies you, where motivation has failed and structure is required, where wishing must give way to command. Be warned. Once these sentences are understood, you cannot unhear them. They will confront you each time you drift. They will remind you of what you chose to ignore. And that is why they demand respect before they deliver reward. The world is governed by cause and effect, not chance. Thought is cause. Circumstance is effect. When thought is vague, results are weak. When thought is definite and reinforced through repetition, results accelerate. That is the reason these sentences work. They eliminate vagueness. They force decision. They compel alignment between desire, belief, and action. But they do not work for the impatient or the curious. They work for the obedient. You may feel an urge to rush ahead, to collect them quickly, to treat them as tools. Resist that urge. Tools unused remain harmless. Power lies not in possession, but in disciplined use over time. This knowledge was never meant to be free because freedom invites neglect. Value is created through commitment. When something costs attention, repetition, and persistence, it becomes valuable. When it costs nothing, it is treated as nothing. That is the dividing line. One man hears these sentences and changes the trajectory of his life. Another hears the same words and forgets them by morning. The difference is not intelligence. It is obedience. If you choose to use this knowledge, use it fully. Speak the sentences with belief. Return to them daily. Let them replace hesitation with certainty. Let them reshape how you think, act, and decide. Do not attempt to improve them. Do not dilute them. Do not combine them with doubt. Laws do not respond to negotiation. They respond to alignment and persistence. You are standing at a threshold. On one side is information you admire. On the other is instruction you obey. Only one of these produces wealth. Only one of these was ever meant for serious men. Listen carefully as you proceed. Treat each sentence as a command to the subconscious. Repeat them until they think for you, because once they do, the world will begin to respond differently. This knowledge was never meant to be free, but it is here now. Use it while you can. Part 1. The price of power and why it was never given freely. Power has never been hidden from men. That is the first misunderstanding I must correct. Truth has always been visible to those prepared to carry it. What was restrained was not knowledge itself, but the careless distribution of responsibility. Wealth-producing understanding was never concealed behind mystery, but behind discipline. Only those willing to pay the price of obedience were ever permitted to keep it. Throughout history, men have mistaken access for possession. They believed that hearing a principle meant owning it, that reading words meant mastering them. But laws do not respond to hearing. They respond to use, and use requires discipline. When discipline is absent, knowledge becomes destructive instead of productive, because power without restraint always collapses upon itself. This is why wealth knowledge was never given freely in spirit, even when it was spoken freely in words. The unprepared man hears truth and treats it as entertainment. He nods, agrees, feels uplifted, and returns unchanged to old habits. The prepared man hears the same truth and feels the weight of responsibility descend upon him immediately. There is a vast difference between hearing truth and submitting to it. Hearing requires nothing but attention. Submission requires obedience. Submission demands that a man alter his conduct, his habits, his speech, and his daily order. That cost alone filters out the casual listener long before results ever appear. Simple truths are ignored because they do not flatter the intellect. Complexity offers excuses. Complexity allows delay. Complexity invites endless discussion. Simplicity demands action. A simple instruction leaves no place to hide. That is why the most powerful principles are also the most resisted. Men admire complex theories because they promise progress without responsibility. They allow a man to feel intelligent while remaining unchanged. But wealth never obeyed intelligence alone. It obeyed decision reinforced through repetition and discipline. Those who learned this early guarded their understanding carefully, not from others, but from misuse. Careless access destroys respect for instruction. When a man acquires knowledge without effort, he assigns it little value. What costs nothing is treated as nothing. What demands discipline is protected. This is not cruelty, it is law. Value rises in proportion to the effort required to sustain it. Wealth obeys law, not hope. It does not respond to sincerity, good intentions, or moral pleading. It responds only to cause correctly applied. Many men are sincere in their desire for riches. Few are disciplined in their behavior. Law recognizes only the latter. Responsibility begins the moment understanding arrives. Once a principle is comprehended, ignorance can no longer shield the man who refuses to act. He may delay. He may rationalize. But inwardly he knows. And that knowledge becomes a silent judge, weakening self-respect each time it is ignored. Knowledge becomes dangerous when treated casually. Words that instruct the subconscious must be handled with care. Repeated without belief, they confuse. Spoken without intent, they weaken authority. Used inconsistently, they erode confidence. This is why careless affirmation produces nothing, and disciplined declaration reshapes destiny. Restraint, not secrecy, protected this wisdom. Men who possessed it learned quickly that not everyone should receive it at once. Responsibility must be earned gradually, just as strength is built gradually. To give power to a man unwilling to obey it is to invite ruin. I have seen men handed opportunity beyond their discipline. They inherited wealth, influence, and position without having formed character to support it. Their lives became disordered. Confidence turned to arrogance. Authority turned to recklessness. What was not earned could not be maintained. In contrast, I have observed men entrusted slowly with responsibility. Their burdens increased in proportion to their obedience. Their confidence grew quietly. Their authority deepened. When wealth arrived, it found structure already prepared to receive it. Inherited wealth often vanishes because it arrives before discipline. Earned wealth endures because discipline precedes reward. This is not moral judgment. It is mechanical truth. Structure must exist before weight can be supported. When a man understands this, others notice a change. He listens differently. He no longer collects words casually. He measures instruction before accepting it. He senses responsibility in truth rather than excitement. His speech changes. He speaks less, but with greater precision. He no longer repeats phrases he does not intend to obey. Each word carries weight because it is aligned with action. People feel this alignment even if they cannot explain it. The man who respects power before demanding reward moves differently through life. He no longer seeks shortcuts. He understands that discipline is not punishment, but protection. It guards him from self-deception. I treat instruction as law. I respect power before I demand reward. I accept responsibility the moment I understand. The wealthy learned early that discipline is the price of freedom. Without discipline, freedom becomes chaos. With discipline, freedom becomes power. This understanding separated those who commanded wealth from those who admired it from a distance. Knowledge was never meant to be free because freedom invites neglect. When something costs nothing, it is easily discarded. When it demands daily obedience, it becomes valuable. That value shapes behavior. Men often ask why truth does not change their circumstances. The answer is simple. Truth does nothing on its own. It must be carried by disciplined action. Without that carrier, it remains inert. This is why repetition matters, not as comfort, but as command. Repetition enforces responsibility. It reminds the mind daily of what has been chosen. It eliminates excuses gradually, not violently. The man who submits to instruction becomes powerful quietly. He does not announce transformation. He embodies it. Others notice consistency where there was once confusion. They sense certainty where there was once hesitation. This knowledge was never meant to be scattered. It was meant to be selected, respected, and obeyed. When treated that way, it builds wealth not only in material form, but in character. Many men want reward without restraint. They want power without discipline. Law does not permit this exchange. Reward follows obedience as effect follows cause. If this truth feels heavy, it should. Weight is the signal of responsibility. Power always carries weight. Those unwilling to bear it are spared its consequences. The moment a man stops consuming instruction casually, his life begins to reorganize. He becomes selective. He becomes deliberate. He becomes accountable. This is the price of power. It has never changed. Part 2. Words as commands, not comfort. Men speak constantly, yet few understand what they are doing when they use words. Speech is treated as expression, as habit, as noise to fill silence. But words are not harmless. They are directives. Long before action appears, words shape expectation, and expectation governs behavior. What a man says repeatedly becomes instruction to his inner world. Spoken words direct conduct quietly. A man may believe he chooses his actions freely, yet his daily speech has already prepared the decision. The subconscious does not wait for logic. It obeys suggestion. Repeated language becomes accepted order, and accepted order becomes behavior without argument. There is a difference between repeating phrases and issuing commands. A phrase spoken without intention is only sound. A command spoken with decision carries authority. The subconscious recognizes the difference immediately. It obeys certainty and ignores hesitation, no matter how beautiful the words may sound. Most men repeat words hoping they will feel something. Feeling is irrelevant. The subconscious responds to consistency, not emotion. A sentence spoken daily with calm certainty has more power than 1,000 spoken in excitement and forgotten by morning. Faith does not grow from enthusiasm. It grows from familiarity. When a man hears his own voice repeat the same instruction day after day, belief forms naturally. He does not need to persuade himself. His repetition persuades him without effort. Vague language produces vague results. When words lack precision, behavior lacks direction. A man who speaks in generalities lives in generalities. Wealth responds to clarity. Life arranges itself around exact instruction, not hopeful suggestion. This is why most affirmations fail. They are spoken as wishes, not orders. They are mixed with doubt, apology, and contradiction. The man repeats one sentence in the morning and denies it with behavior by afternoon. The subconscious receives confusion and produces nothing. The danger of mixing doubt with declaration cannot be overstated. A man who says, "I will," and then questions himself, trains his mind to distrust instruction. Over time, the inner voice weakens. Decisions feel heavy. Action feels forced. Disciplined speech forms expectation. Expectation directs attention. Attention governs behavior. Behavior produces results. This chain begins with words. Break the chain at the start, and nothing follows. I have observed men who spoke decisively and acted accordingly. Their words were few, but final. When they said they would act, they did. Their speech carried weight because it was never wasted on intention without follow-through. Leaders who shaped outcomes did not speak excessively. They spoke clearly. Their certainty created confidence in others. Men followed them not because they promised comfort, but because their words were dependable. Hopeful talk comforts the speaker, but produces nothing. Commanding instruction unsettles the speaker, but creates change. Comfort is attractive. Authority is effective. Wealth answers the latter. When a man begins to use words as commands, others notice. His speech becomes calm and exact. He no longer explains himself endlessly. He states direction and moves. Certainty replaces persuasion. His influence grows quietly. Others sense alignment between what he says and what he does. This alignment creates trust. Trust attracts cooperation. Cooperation accelerates results. My words instruct my mind. I speak only what I intend to obey. My language carries authority. The man who disciplines his speech disciplines his thought. Thought follows language. When language is exact, thought becomes orderly. Order replaces chaos. Chaos dissolves quietly, without struggle. Most men sabotage themselves verbally. They repeat doubt daily and wonder why confidence never forms. They speak of difficulty and invite resistance. They describe failure and prepare it. Words are seeds. Planted daily, they grow whether intended or not. The careless man plants weeds and blames the soil. The disciplined man selects seed and protects it through repetition. Speech should not be used to release tension. It should be used to direct energy. The man who speaks to impress loses power. The man who speaks to instruct gains it. This discipline requires restraint. Silence becomes valuable. A man speaks less because each word carries consequence. He no longer speaks casually about his future. He commands it privately through repetition. When words are treated as law, behavior aligns gradually. Resistance weakens. The inner debate ends. Action becomes natural. This is not poetry, it is mechanism. Words spoken consistently reshape expectation. Expectation reshapes conduct. Conduct reshapes circumstance. Most men never experience this because they speak carelessly. They scatter instruction daily. The subconscious responds by scattering results. The man who understands this chooses his words carefully. He does not speak against himself. He does not rehearse defeat. He does not dilute instruction with humor or doubt. Speech becomes an instrument. Used properly, it builds wealth quietly. Used carelessly, it destroys confidence silently. When a man commands his mind through disciplined language, his world begins to respond. Opportunities align. Decisions simplify. Fear weakens. This is why words were never meant for comfort. They were meant for command. Part 3. The 11 sentences as compression of law. Men often believe that power hides in length. They assume that truth must be explained at great distance to be effective. This belief is false. Power lives in compression. The shorter the instruction, the less room there is for excuse. Length invites interpretation. Compression demands obedience. A long explanation gives the mind many exits. It allows a man to agree with part and ignore the rest. A short sentence offers no escape. It either governs behavior or exposes resistance. That is why laws are brief. They are not written to entertain. They are written to rule. The subconscious prefers clarity over volume. It does not reason as the conscious mind does. It accepts what is repeated clearly and consistently. When instruction is compressed into a single sentence, repetition becomes easier and obedience becomes unavoidable. Each of the 11 sentences was designed to carry pressure. Not emotional pressure, but directive force. They are not suggestions. They are condensed commands. When repeated daily, they do not persuade. They instruct. An instruction, when accepted, reshapes conduct. Men weaken instruction by explaining it repeatedly instead of applying it. They believe understanding must precede action. In truth, action produces understanding. Repetition clarifies meaning through experience, not discussion. Selection matters more than accumulation. A man who gathers many ideas rarely applies any. A man who chooses a few principles and returns to them daily builds power quietly. Wealth responds to depth, not breadth. Fewer words repeated outperform many words ignored. This is law. 10 sentences lived are worth more than 1,000 admired. The mind cannot serve many masters. It obeys what is returned to consistently. Discipline is required to stay with simple instruction. Complexity flatters the ego. Simplicity confronts the will. That is why men abandon simple laws and chase new theories. They seek novelty to escape responsibility. I have known successful men who governed their lives by a handful of ideas. They were not scholars. They were obedient. Their power came not from knowing much, but from living a little deeply. Others rejected excess information deliberately. They refused to clutter the mind with untested theory. They protected their attention as they protected capital. This restraint allowed clarity to form. There is a sharp difference between collectors of ideas and users of law. Collectors speak well and act little. Users speak less and act daily. The world rewards the latter. When a man adopts compressed instruction, others notice a change. He becomes consistent instead of scattered. His behavior aligns quickly with his words. Decision replaces delay. His confidence no longer fluctuates with circumstance. It steadies because it rests on repetition, not mood. Familiar instruction becomes inner law. I value clarity over volume. I repeat what I choose to live. I simplify to gain power. The 11 sentences were never meant to be improved. They were meant to be obeyed. Modification weakens force. Addition dilutes authority. Law responds only to alignment. Men often ask why simple sentences feel heavy. They feel heavy because they remove excuses. A man can debate complexity. He must obey simplicity or admit refusal. Compression increases force because it concentrates attention. Attention directed repeatedly becomes expectation. Expectation directs behavior. Behavior shapes result. Each sentence acts as a lever. Used once, it moves nothing. Used daily, it shifts identity. Identity governs destiny. The subconscious resists nothing repeated calmly. It resists only inconsistency. Calm repetition signals permanence. Permanence invites obedience. Many fear simplicity because it exposes drift. Complex plans hide inaction. Simple commands reveal it. That revelation is uncomfortable, but necessary. The man who accepts compressed law stops searching. He stops collecting. He returns. Return builds power. These sentences are not magic. They are law. They work only when treated as such. Law does not negotiate. It responds. The disciplined man repeats without emotion. He does not ask whether it feels effective. He applies because he has decided. Over time, the sentences begin to think for him. Decisions simplify. Action aligns. Results appear without strain. This is why the knowledge was restrained. Not because it was rare, but because it was exact. Exactness demands discipline. Most men cannot endure repetition without novelty. They abandon instruction just as it begins to work. They mistake boredom for failure. Boredom is the signal that identity is about to change. Those who remain cross into power. Those who flee remain collectors. The 11 sentences compress law into daily command. They eliminate vagueness. They force decision. They reward obedience. The man who lives them does not need motivation. He has instruction. Part 4. Repetition as obedience, not motivation. Repetition has been misunderstood by nearly every man who desires success. It has been softened, romanticized, and reduced to encouragement. But repetition was never designed to inspire. It was designed to command. When repetition is treated as motivation, it weakens. When treated as obedience, it reshapes identity. Motivation rises and falls. Obedience remains. The man who waits to feel ready will never repeat long enough to change. The man who repeats because he has decided does not ask permission from mood. His discipline outlasts enthusiasm, and that is where power begins. Repetition without obedience produces nothing because it lacks authority. Words spoken without commitment are only sound. The subconscious accepts instruction only when repetition signals permanence. A sentence returned to daily without negotiation becomes law within the mind. Identity forms through daily return, not through intensity, but through consistency. The man becomes what he repeats because repetition trains expectation. Expectation governs conduct. Conduct produces result. This sequence cannot be rushed or bypassed. Enthusiasm must die for discipline to live. Enthusiasm belongs to beginnings. Discipline belongs to continuance. Most men abandon repetition when excitement fades, not realizing that excitement fading is the signal that discipline is about to take control. There is an unseen moment when repetition becomes belief. The man does not notice it immediately. He simply finds himself acting differently. Decisions feel easier. Resistance weakens. Behavior aligns without effort. This is the moment repetition fulfills its purpose. Resistance fades through familiarity. What once felt foreign becomes normal. What once required effort becomes habit. Habit governs action without struggle. This is why repetition must be daily. Gaps invite resistance to return. Skipping days weakens instruction. Each missed return tells the subconscious the command is optional. Optional commands carry no authority. The man trains inconsistency and wonders why results hesitate. Law responds only to consistency. It does not respond to sincerity or explanation. A cause applied irregularly produces irregular effect. A cause applied daily produces certainty. I have seen men repeat instruction until behavior changed. They did not argue with the process. They did not ask whether it was working. They returned daily. Over time, their actions shifted without force. I have observed figures whose routines shaped their fortunes. Their success was not dramatic. It was inevitable. They did the same things daily while others waited for inspiration. The contrast between inspired beginnings and disciplined continuance explains most failure. Many start with fire. Few finish with structure. Fire excites. Structure builds. When repetition becomes obedience, others notice a change. The man becomes steady rather than intense. His emotional highs and lows soften. His confidence stabilizes. His results become predictable. Predictability is power. It signals control. It attracts trust. Trust invites cooperation. His presence feels reliable. Others sense that he will not retreat. This reliability commands respect quietly. I return daily without negotiation. I obey before I evaluate. Repetition governs my results. Repetition is not punishment. It is alignment. It aligns thought, speech, and action gradually. When alignment forms, effort reduces. Results accelerate. The disciplined man does not repeat because he hopes. He repeats because he has decided. Decision removes negotiation. Negotiation wastes energy. Many men sabotage repetition by constantly modifying it. They adjust words, timing, method, hoping to feel something. This adjustment resets the process repeatedly. Stability is required for authority to form. Repetition should be calm. Emotion is unnecessary. Calm repetition signals certainty. Certainty instructs the subconscious more effectively than excitement ever could. The man who remains faithful to repetition develops inner order. Chaos dissolves, clarity forms, focus sharpens. Repetition trains patience without effort. Time no longer feels wasted. Each day adds weight to the same direction. Life becomes cumulative instead of scattered. Most men fail here. They leave just before repetition locks in belief. They mistake boredom for failure and abandon instruction. Boredom is the test. Those who pass enter authority. Those who flee remain dependent on motivation. Repetition turns desire into structure. Structure turns effort into habit. Habit turns habit into identity. Once identity shifts, action becomes natural. The man no longer forces himself. He expresses himself. This is the stage where success stops feeling chased. It begins to feel expected. The man who obeys repetition daily becomes immune to distraction. Novelty loses appeal. Direction strengthens. He no longer asks whether to continue. He continues because continuation defines him. Repetition removes drama. Drama feeds ego. Repetition feeds results. Those who repeat daily grow quietly powerful. They do not announce progress. Progress announces itself. Repetition seals commitment. Commitment produces confidence. Confidence attracts opportunity. This is why repetition was never meant to motivate. It was meant to govern. Part 5. Why most men fail after hearing the truth. Hearing truth has never been rare. Transformation has always been. This distinction explains why so many men stand near power yet never touch it. They hear principles clearly, even agree with them sincerely, and still return to the same habits that produced their former results. Exposure alone has never altered destiny. Agreement produces no results because agreement requires no sacrifice. A man can agree while remaining unchanged. He can admire truth without obeying it. Law does not respond to admiration. It responds only to application enforced through discipline. Until action changes, nothing else does. After inspiration fades, drift quietly returns. It does not arrive with resistance. It arrives with comfort. The man resumes familiar routines. He postpones application. He tells himself there is time. Drift is patient. It waits for emotion to cool and then resumes control. Curiosity weakens discipline because curiosity always seeks more before acting. The curious man wants additional confirmation, another explanation, a better method. While he searches, time passes. Opportunity does not wait for certainty. It responds to decision. Mixing instruction with hesitation destroys force. A man who says this is true but has already retreated, the subconscious hears the hesitation, not the instruction. Doubt injected into command cancels authority immediately. Men dilute truth by modifying it. They soften words to fit comfort. They shorten discipline to fit convenience. They adapt law to preference. Law does not bend. It simply stops responding. Partial obedience equals full failure because law is exact. A bridge built halfway does not carry weight. A command followed occasionally does not instruct the mind. Inconsistency trains weakness, not strength. Excuses return quietly after clarity. They do not announce themselves. They appear as reason, fatigue, timing, or distraction. The man believes he is being practical, unaware that drift has resumed authority. I have seen men hear powerful ideas and do nothing with them. They spoke about change intelligently. They explained principles accurately. Yet their lives remained untouched because explanation replaced execution. I have watched figures delay action until opportunity passed. They waited for better conditions. They waited for confidence. They waited for certainty. While they waited, others acted. Opportunity does not announce departure. The contrast between listeners and doers is visible immediately. The listener speaks, the doer moves, the listener plans, the doer applies. Over time, the gap widens until it becomes unbridgeable. The man who avoids this trap behaves differently. He acts when others discuss. He applies while others analyze. He moves forward without announcement because he no longer seeks validation. Others notice this change. They see progress where they expected conversation. They feel momentum where they expected hesitation. Respect forms quietly. I do not dilute instruction. I act without delay. I finish what I begin. Most men fail not because truth is hidden, but because obedience is difficult. Discipline exposes weakness. Weakness resists exposure. So men choose comfort and call it patience. Truth demands immediacy, not haste, but response. Delay weakens instruction. Action strengthens it. Each delayed application trains avoidance. Men often mistake understanding for readiness. Readiness is created through action, not thought. Thought prepares. Action commits. The man who hears truth and acts immediately gains advantage over those who wait. Speed is not recklessness when direction is clear. Delay is danger when opportunity is present. Drift is subtle. It convinces men they are still moving because they are still thinking. Thinking without action is drift refined. Excuses often sound reasonable. That is why they are dangerous. They disguise retreat as intelligence. The man who acts before he feels ready trains courage. Courage formed this way becomes calm and reliable. Those who fail after hearing truth rarely admit refusal. They describe circumstances. They analyze conditions. They speak of obstacles. They avoid the word obedience. Obedience is unpopular because it demands surrender of comfort. Yet obedience is the only language law understands. The man who obeys does not need repeated inspiration. He has instruction. Instruction governs behavior regardless of feeling. Those who merely listen remain dependent on emotion. When emotion fades, action stops. The difference between success and stagnation is not knowledge, it is response. Part 6, Wealth as Response to Authority. Wealth has never been something to be chased. That belief has misled generations of men into exhausting effort without command. Riches do not flee or hide. They respond. And they respond only to authority. Authority is not claimed through desire, nor earned through wishing. It is formed through obedience, repetition, and certainty applied daily. Men who pursue wealth anxiously repel it. Anxiety signals indecision. Indecision signals weakness. Law does not respond to weakness. It responds to alignment. When a man aligns thought, speech, and action into one direction and sustains it, wealth begins to move toward him without persuasion. Authority is built long before money appears. It forms quietly in the discipline of daily conduct. A man who keeps his word to himself develops inner order. That order becomes visible through behavior. Behavior signals reliability. Reliability attracts responsibility. Responsibility attracts reward. Wealth responds to command, not desire. Desire initiates movement, but command directs it. A man who merely wants riches waits for conditions to change. A man who commands through disciplined action becomes the condition that change responds to. Alignment creates authority. When a man's words match his actions and his actions repeat daily, his presence carries certainty. Others sense this certainty. They trust it. Trust invites cooperation. Cooperation multiplies effort. Certainty attracts allies because certainty feels safe. Men prefer to join direction rather than confusion. Opportunity seeks stability. Wealth avoids chaos. Hesitation repels opportunity quietly. It sends the signal that direction is not settled. Opportunity passes such men without announcement. They often do not realize what was offered until it is gone. Wealth avoids the undecided because indecision creates waste. Resources flow toward those who use them efficiently. Efficiency is born from focus and repetition. Consistency produces inevitability. When action is repeated daily, results cease to be accidental. They become predictable. Predictability is power. It allows planning, expansion, and control. Obedience restores self-respect. Each day a man obeys his chosen instruction, he strengthens trust in himself. That trust becomes confidence. Confidence governs decision. Decision accelerates action. I have seen men trusted with resources not because they were brilliant, but because they were reliable. They returned daily. They finished what they began. Their authority grew through consistency, not display. I have known figures whose certainty attracted allies naturally. They did not recruit aggressively. Others aligned themselves because direction was clear and unwavering. Lives have been reshaped by disciplined authority. Not overnight, but permanently. The man did not change his nature. He refined it through obedience. Wealth is obedience made visible. It is structure rewarded. It is discipline expressed materially. Power follows discipline because discipline creates order. Order attracts resources. Resources amplify discipline. Authority precedes reward. The world tests a man's consistency before entrusting him with greater responsibility. Those who fail the test remain stagnant. I speak with authority. I obey what I declare. Wealth responds to my discipline. What I repeat becomes my reality. The man who understands this stops pleading with life. He begins directing himself. That direction reshapes circumstance without struggle. Wealth does not answer those who ask politely. It answers those who act decisively. The man who commands himself commands opportunity. He no longer waits, he proceeds. This is the final distinction. Power does not come from knowledge alone. It comes from knowledge obeyed. Those who understand this no longer seek permission. They accept responsibility. And responsibility, when carried faithfully, always yields reward.